Hello and good evening and welcome to this evening's Bloc Party, part of the Writers' Bloc. Many of you will know that the Writers' Bloc is a dedicated online space for writing in all of its forms, and launched during the pandemic to keep people connected, creative, and most of all, productive. Now, I'm Madeline Hennigan. I'm a co-director of Writing on the Wall. It's been an incredibly busy and exciting week at Writing on the Wall. We've just launched our full programme for our 21st anniversary Wow Fest, featuring some incredible names. Jon Snow will be joining us, Lady Phil, all the way from America. We've got Walter Mosley and Maxine Hong Kingston. So do check out that programme on our brand new website. And a special introductory offer for our 21st anniversary. We're doing a full festival pass. It's a time limited offer, but it's a full festival pass for £21. So check that out. So this evening's Bloc Party, many of you will know, regulars on our Writers' Bloc will know that the Bloc Party is the final celebratory event where our writer on the block, or our writer in residence, joins us to share their experiences of the block, share the work that they have produced, but also our group of writers who've joined us on the block to develop their work will also be sharing the fruits of their labour. The Bloc Party is the perfect end to the week and the perfect start to the weekend. We've had some incredible writers on the block, and this evening is no different. We have broadcaster, journalist, novelist, essayist, critic. She's incredibly prolific and incredibly talented. So could you welcome, please, virtual welcome for Bidisha. Hi, Bidisha.
So that's very flattering.
No, not at all. It's lovely to see you again. 3 weeks, it's flown by. It does fly when you're having a good time. And I know that your sessions have been incredibly popular. Your one-to-ones have been all booked up. So yeah, just it's an unusual thing, isn't it, being a writer on the block in a virtual space. How have you found it?
I found it really intense in a very good way, but the 3 weeks have flown by, but I'm quite exhausted now, sort of mentally exhausted, because I'm receiving all of this really positive feedback from other people. So I've encountered so many amazing projects and writers. I think in the one-to-ones, every single project that was pitched to me by the other person I was having a one-to-one with, they were all brilliant ideas. And I hope that I was able to kind of step out some next steps for everyone who's working on them. I ended up with a very strong sense of how writing can be quite lonely if you're not careful. And it's a lonely job anyway, but I'm not sure that the pandemic is making anything better. And something that I kept saying to everyone I was talking to was, don't think that lockdown is your challenge to produce your great work of art. I think just managing to get through the day without overeating or just watching Netflix for 13 hours, I think that's a win. We shouldn't then have to try and work on our masterpiece. And it's very hard to work when you're unstimulated as well. But it's just been really good reconnecting with people and meeting new people. Just being in dialogue with new faces and new names has been very inspiring and very life-affirming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point about stimulation. It has been hard, and it's hard to produce new ideas if you're not taking in, if you haven't got that stimulation. And it's part of the reason for the block, the idea behind the block is because connected. You're right, writing can be, the image of the lonely writer in the garret it is partly true. And, you know, eventually you do have to sit and you do have to knock those words out. And you have to do that on your own. But that community of writers, and I think you'll agree, Writing on the Wall has got an incredibly creative and talented community around us. So I'm glad you've enjoyed your time on the block. I hope you will be able to have a little bit of a rest following this very intense 3-week period, because not only have you been supporting writers and helping them to develop their work, you've also produced some new work specifically for us, Writing on the Wall, which is just brilliant. So, yeah, if you're ready to share that work, we'd be very happy to hear it.
I make films, but when I don't do that, my creative form is actually poetry and short stories. And I wrote a short poem called The Greenway because, like many people, my world has shrunk massively down to just walks in the local area. But at the same time, just being trapped at home and not being able to travel, I became extremely nostalgic. I used to live and work in Beijing in 2014 and 2016, staying with a very good friend of mine. And I began missing all of the stuff that's out there in the world. And there was a very long walk that you could take in Beijing that was called the Greenway. It had 26 plus miles of walking, and it was my way of traveling without being able to travel. So this is called the Greenway. In the last family well-being report, the government said it was each person's natural right to live near a pretty place, that doing so healed the mind as well as a work-beaten body. Walking 12 miles of the Greenway on the solstice evening, under the grizzled knot of flyovers flowing into the second ring road, between the Kappa clothing warehouse and the former plastics factory, the humidity cements the darkness, makes the traffic stilted and gappy. A coach bleeds smoke at the curb, its logo a white horse crossing a river. The guard has his vest rolled up over his belly. He listens to Peking opera, an emperor's shout and a clang of cymbals skim off the surface of the canal. A lady with a microphone leads a troupe of synchronized dancers under the bridge. Fishermen wait by the bank, sneaking a cigarette, shining a torch into the water to see if they can light a snap of tin flank or a tail of vanished rose gold. A tub of oily black finger-length eels slimes at their feet to use at bait. A leaf on the pond is a matte black felt heart on a black vinyl background. The municipality keep all the lamps turned off to save money. A teenage couple sits together in the dark on a bench, just talking. A gentleman practices his flute, his back to the water. He faces the carefully placed boulders and dry shrubbery to keep his concentration and stave off embarrassment. Amateur choirs sing folk songs on both sides of the canal. Aunties and uncles in fine voice, their vibrato a little competitive. There are so many insects ticking anxiously in the trees. The sound thins and thickens like an ebbing current. Young people walk with their phones to their eyes, their faces lit as if by a white bouquet. It's important to keep looking into the screen or they'll miss something, like the police car parked by the junction, its sirens suppressed, lights mutely splashing blue and red, like a dragon's eyes pulsing as it waits. And the officer sitting inside, slack-bodied behind the glass, his shirt open in the heat, his chest clean, watching the pretty place. And that's it. It's all about the humidity and the isolation of walking at night and everyone else in the community having the same idea.
A really beautiful piece, Bidisha. Congratulations. I feel like I was walking there with you. I was on that greenway too. I think it's an incredibly visual piece. There's a lot of lovely images, but not of the flyovers and the yields as well, but also, the sounds of that experience and the temperature even. So I think you've really I've never been there, but I feel like you have captured that experience of the walk on the Greenway incredibly well.
I think that something that's happening under lockdown is that we're remembering in incredibly vivid detail all of our past travels. So I started watching all these Korean romantic comedies on Netflix, and I started watching the characters when they're eating and missing Korean food and Chinese food and Japanese food, and starting having weird sensual fantasies of details that I'd never thought about before in years. But I really miss having a meal with people. I really miss getting dressed up and going out and wearing perfume, the smell of perfume that you only wear when you're out, your favorite perfume. I'm just missing all of that so much. The way we're living now, it's not natural at all. It's really not natural. We're mammals. We like to kind of hear each other and smell each other and smell each other's pheromones. And that's not in a sleazy way. It's just totally natural.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't natural, but, your talk about the walk, it's very, it will connect with a lot of people because that's the only thing we can do at the moment. So we're all out walking. I've never been a walker, but I am taking a walk every day, just, because there's nothing else to do. But you do start to notice things. I think that's the beauty of it, is that you start to notice things that you wouldn't necessarily notice before. If I'm walking around, say, Prince's Park, which is a park close to me, which I've been doing a lot, you notice something different about the same place every day. And I think, from a writer's point of view, that level of detail, even though our lives have kind of shrunk in a way, it does allow us to focus in on the detail that perhaps the pace of our lives and that we perhaps wouldn't have, we don't always, it passes us by because we're too busy and we're too fast, and we wouldn't be walking anyway. So so I found that a really lovely piece to read. Did it take you, to listen to even, did it take you a long time to do that piece?
I don't find poetry difficult. I find it easy and very pleasurable to do. But you're absolutely right, by the way. So getting all of those details, it's like a form of walking meditation. It's an iterative process. So you don't log all of the same details at the same time. And there's also a journalistic element. So I'm detailsy anyway. I notice aesthetics. I notice sensual moments. But the key about writing a poem is that the first draft isn't the final draft ever. You have to read it aloud to yourself. And the other thing about poetry is, it sounds really tacky to say it, but shorter is better with poetry. Nobody wants to read a long poem ever, for some reason. And no one really wants to write one because then it turns into something else, like a short story or an opera. So my goal was absolute clarity and lightness at the same time. And I also think poetry has to be sayable. So even if you're not reading it aloud, your inner voice in your brain is sort of reading it aloud. And so then you have to cut out any word that sticks out massively. Even if you love it, even if you really like that sentence, put it onto a blank document and use it in another poem if it doesn't fit the one that you're working on. I really like poetry, and I think lots of us really write poetry without realizing it. So when we write one line in our notebook or one line in our diary, it's actually poetry, or there's a Japanese form called the pillow book that I really love. And a pillow book is sort of like a book of observations or kind of early period Japanese tweets. You notice something about the weather, you notice something about someone's appearance, and you just have these observations filtering down in a diary form. And I adore that form. And if anyone wants to read a really great version, Lady Murasaki's diary, one of the first ever world writers, there's a Penguin Classics of Lady Murasaki's diary, and it's real. She was a noblewoman. She kept this great diary, and it's really gossipy and really fun. Human nature hasn't changed in centuries, and that proves it.
I mean, I think it absolutely. For me, the beauty of poetry is that condensing of language, condensing of meaning, producing an image in as fewer words. I'm not one for small talk, as people will say. So that getting to the point in least words possible, I absolutely love that. But I think also, if you can write poetry, it does really strengthen your ability to write anything else. In fact, and I'm thinking of the great Toni Morrison, and how her prose is actually just very, very poetic, in terms of the images. Everything comes to life on the page. And I think it is because she is also a poet that prose is so strong. And talking about Japanese poetry, I do love haikus. And I think the discipline of a haiku is a really good thing to practice, to get that, to cut out those unnecessary words. I've got some feedback here. Aaron Murdoch says, I always think I'm doing everything wrong whenever I hear another reading. Fantastic. Fantastic stuff. Good reportage. Well, I don't think we were meant that was meant for you to think you're doing things wrong, Aaron. So don't take that away from tonight's block party. And Roshni said, a beautiful piece and very sensory. So great feedback all round, and thank you so much for sharing that with us, Bidisha. It's this moment on the block party, hearing new and original work for the first time, is always very, very exciting for me. And we're going to have more of it. We're going to have more from some of the writers that you've been supporting, that you've been working with over your 3-week residency. So I'm going to hand over to you now to introduce those writers as we hear this new work.
Thank you so much, Madeline, and thanks for that feedback. To Aaron, who is now worried about his own work, I wanted to say that your writing style is like your style of dress. Whatever works for you suits you, and if I tried to dress like you, it wouldn't work. If you tried to dress like me, it wouldn't work. So own your style and never worry about someone else's style. It gives me enormous pleasure to welcome 3 readers tonight. I'll introduce them as we go along, but the first one is Sunita Thind. Sunita, if you're standing by, I think that now that we're drawing to the end of Writer on the Block, we would absolutely love to open up to hear new voices. Sunita Thind, over to you.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that, Bidisha, I've still loved your first book, Seahorses. It inspired me when I was going through a very dark time with my ovarian cancer. So I've loved your work forever. So it's been amazing to interact with you. I thought I'd read a bit of poetry, if that's okay. The first poem, I'm just going to do a few minutes. It's called The Barging Buddy. Buddy is an affectionate term for elderly lady. And it was a poem, an ode to my grandmother who passed away last year. Yeah, so I'll get started. I used to sink into my buddy's cinnamon and homely bosom. This barging buddy permitted some unwitting pedestrian to pass on the way to school. Merad dal khani, she would utter. I want to eat lentil curry. I toyed with the bright yellow gold chain, a fattening and gilded snake. This barging buddy cuts down a 5-year-old cherub on a bike on her way to her daughter's house. To see his strikabdi, she'd squawk, you will do some ironing. She slathers greasy coconut oil in my inky black plait that swishes from side to side. This barging buddy railroads a gawkish teenager off a skateboard while sweeping off front pavement, languishing in a salwar kameez, tattooed with a million forehead. This barging buddy shoves a misshapen shopper. Mirabana beanie she mouthed to me. I want to drink water. This barging buddy places an embellished jinni on my head, and we proceed to the Gurdwara. Wahiguruji Kakasa, Wahiguruji Ki Fateh, she prays, a Sikh prayer. This barging buddy is not so barging, this grandmother of mine. I am just going to read another 2 poems, if that's okay. This one is called Gawping at the Gods of the Gurdwara, and it may sound like an age-old cliche, but coming from a Sikh Punjabi family living between the East and West, being married to a Westerner, it can be quite a challenge to straddle both sometimes. So this is my take. Gawping at the Gods of the Gurdwara. Guru Nanak, Guru Har Gobind, Guru Amar Das, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My face will be towards that person who says it first. My back will be towards that person who says it afterwards. I will be in between both of them if both of them say it together. Hence, in order to spread the message of brotherhood, the dual-toned jinni strangles me with customs. Head must be covered with a scarf for a woman, a turban for a man. Bare feet in a ceremonial hall, cover your legs and arms for modesty. One universal creator being. The name is truth, the creative being personified. No fear, hatred, image of the undying beyond birth, self-existence by Guru's grace. The 5K is emblazoned on my Punjabi school student brain, learning the alphabet, Ura, Era, Iri, Ganga, code, cleanliness, slick from my coconut oiled plait, gesh, uncut hair, to symbolize spiritual power, or in my case, the chemo had taken away. Gurban, silk sword for respect and justice. Gara, steel bangle, or in my case, a golden one. Gajra, short for modesty. I hear the kirtan as my onyx black plait sloshes into my dal and aloo gobi. I shovel down 3 roti before being dragged to worship in my itchy green Indian suit. Jabad such, true in the primal being, true through the ages. The Grunti, the custodian, seated before the Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh Bible. Silver-tipped beard of the Grunti sermonizing the prayer. Atop his head is a burnt orange turban with a steel gunda ornament, a circle with 3 weapons, and a Sikh military emblem. The numb buttocks on the floor for sitting for hours trying to decipher this exotic prayer. I am only partially bilingual. I hear the vajra, the harmonium, the dole strike up a spiritual kirtan, the dole drumming. I continue to gawp at the gods of the Gurdwara in befuddlement and awe. Hair Aj such, Jabad such, happy such, true hair, and oh Nanak forever, ever true. So there was that one. I don't really know how long I've got, but there was one more poem I wanted to do, if that's okay. And it's called Lust Muscles of My Forefather. So I'll just get it up, if that's okay. Sorry, I need to find it. Here it is. In the memory of muscles, something remains even when gone. Shame punished them, coming of age to touch what is living. Bloody scratches, unnatural stains, jewel bright cherryade red. Foaming waters gave way to constellations. Rotten seeds are now graveyard flowers. Petals swarm near coffins, distilling gems in the sunlight waves, quivering for days. These bloodshot roots, unruly soil of the soul, is death-drenched, fury imitating flames. Auditioned for angel, the exiled ones froth from immortal joy. Angel anger shimmering in my bones, I was desecrated by the lust muscle of my forefathers. The icy clink of glasses, the liquor swirl, the necrosis of the sane, I am fire gored and blackened of soul. This dull native girl is imbibed, the necessary evil, engine of the pedo, vile, contemplating lethal happiness. In deathly mirrors, vice hits her thrice for the lust muscles of her forefathers. So I think that's a nice place to end it, if that's okay. Thank you so much.
That is absolutely amazing. That was Sunita Bind, everyone. And Sunita, I love the emphatic, earthy attack of your work and its muscular energy. I noted down the combination of humor, love, and sharp observation, and also the devotion and the ardor of the sort of flavor, the accent of your writing. I adored the confidence and the supple use of language and the solidity and realism mixed in with yearning and desire, as well as the great humor and wit underlying these pieces. Thank you very much indeed. Now I would like to introduce, and just to say, people are asking about time. So you have 9 minutes exactly, just 9 minutes. So really that is 3 short pieces, exactly as Sunita gave us. 3 short pieces would work really well. Patrick Graham, we would very much like to hear from you. You're smack bang in the middle of tonight's 3 readers. So without further ado, let me introduce everyone to Patrick Graham. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Bidisha. It's a pleasure to be here today. What I'm going to do, I've actually got 2 pieces I want to read. The first is, basically, it's literally 13 years apart because I've never tried journalistic writing before. And I wrote an article going back when Obama was elected called The Credible Candidate. And this time I wrote an article based on the last year called 2020 to 21, the year of the gesture. So, and then I'm going to actually do something quite different after that. And I'm going to read a very short story which has just got a childish take to it. But this one goes 2020, 2021, the year of the gesture. Excuse me. Wilfred Zaha of Crystal Palace is the latest black footballer to refuse to take the knee or to wear Black Lives Matter on his shirt. After almost a year of the gesture and slogan following the death of George Floyd in the USA, he says, because it feels like it's a target. Zaha is disgruntled, and not just individual players such as Kazim Richards of Derby County, but now whole teams are refusing to take the knee. Richards Derby County, along with Brentford and QPR, have stated they'll stop taking the knee this season. They feel that taking the knee is a gesture that's gone on for far too long without any real or effective changes or challenges made to the racism they face as footballers and in wider society. Derby players have since adopted a new stance, with both players and staff linking arms prior to a game in a show of solidarity. In recent weeks, a number of Manchester United's black players have again come under the race spotlight after being abused online following disappointing results on the field. Rashford, Fred and Pogba have all faced racism this season. Also, ex-Arsenal and football pundit Ian Wright. Just this week, Liverpool's Naby Keita and Trent Alexander-Arnold have also faced racism online after their performances on the pitch. To these players, Black lives do matter, and they're concerned, like many in society, about racial abuse of black players online and people outside of football, and feel more needs to be done. Many, if not all, football clubs and institutions throughout society have made bold and uplifting statements about challenging racism and making changes. However, what many are calling gestures and words which no longer have a credible meaning other than making them targets. They also feel there's little to no protection from law and social media platforms. From their viewpoints, it seems enough is enough, and they demand a real stand against racism and taking the knee. One question that can be asked: is standing with arms linked going to become the new way to challenge and highlight racism? Or will that too end with players feeling that it's a gesture that has gone on for too long without any effective changes? Taking the knee is not new, as some may believe, as it was used by Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1960s civil rights struggles in the USA. In more recent times, taking the knee was thrust into the spotlight after the American footballer Colin Kaepernick, took the knee during the national anthem in 2016 prior to a game, and as a result was exiled into the wilderness of American football. Years of speculation followed about will he play again due to what he knelt for, and what will that mean to any team bold enough to sign him due to fear of financial and racial repercussions. Society, doubling as referee and spectators, has blown the whistle for half-time. Another question for the referee and spectators: will we get a game of two halves and changes that matter, or will the poor and unacceptable performance of the first half continue for this match and into the foreseeable future? So that was the, I'd say, a journalistic piece, 13 years apart from my first one that I'd ever wrote, which was an observation of Obama being elected, called A Credible Candidate. This one is just totally different from what I've just read, and it'll take a lot of you back to your childhood days. It's called Once Upon a Time. Once upon a time, the teacher said, there was a time where stories did not begin with the saying once upon a time. Well, how did they start? Asked little Jack. How could you start a story without saying once upon a time? He giggled. That's silly. The teacher looked around and every child was nodding in agreement with little Jack. Does anyone else want to add anything about how stories might have started, she asked. Each child put their hand up and started to talk at the same time. Excuse me, the teacher said abruptly, causing the class to fall silent. That's no way to answer a question. We put up our hands in silence and then we wait for somebody to be picked. Let's try again, shall we? Once again, all hands were raised, only this time in silence. Right, the teacher said. What do you think, Susan? I think it's silly, miss. You have to say once upon a time to start a story. You always say once upon a time and you're the teacher, so it must be the way to tell a story. Yes, that's a very good way of putting it, the teacher smiled. Anyone else, or do you all agree with Susan? They all nodded in agreement. Okay, the teacher said, I'll begin. Once upon a time. And that's the end. That was just, as I say, just a different take. And in some ways, there's an underlying feel when I wrote that about, in some ways, what you could call social conditioning, and conditioning us from a very young age to accept certain behaviours and ways of saying and doing things. So they were my two short pieces. After this time, which they may well be, I may well just get in a quick poem, if that's okay. So this one is, because as I say, I've got my 9 minutes, and it's always mad technology when you're so used to it, and then when you need to find something quickly, it seems to it seems to elude you. So I'll just keep you talking while I just grab up this piece. And excuse me. Okay, I'm gonna click something. Okay, this one is called, it was just based on a writing prompt that we were given, an object from my room and what it reveals to me. So I looked around my room and there was an object that I seen. So the poem goes like this. My object I have picked is a pyramid. We have all seen these things that are famed in ancient Egypt. It reveals to me a number of things. They were built at a time the earth had some of its greatest kings, not forgetting that they had Hatshepsut, maybe their greatest queen, who commissioned magnificent structures. Hers are still there to be seen. A time when humans were at their very best. They still outdo modern man when it comes to this test. Buildings and structures that were unable to replicate, created so long ago, we're not even sure of the correct date. To bury the dead, is that what they were for? Or to honor the night sky and the wonders that they saw? Rooms and chambers inside and tunnels below their base, crafted at a time when it was most splendid for your eyes to behold and to grace. Modern man who is ruled by the powers of Eurocentric politics ridicules those who say the builders were black and calls them romantics. European history actually recorded who these people actually were. Black as the soil of the ground, they said, even held them in high revere. What I see that is so positive and cultural, technologically revealing to the racist in power, we know the truth. This history they keep on concealing. Don't let them make you disbelieve and be full of doubt. Teach it, talk it, share it, and stop them from blacking it out. tell all about Black history, which they wish to keep it hidden and confined to a mere mystery. Well, thank you. That's all from me today. My three very different pieces, just to get you thinking. And as my motto goes, I write for fun, but it ain't no joke, because what I write is to make the thought provoke. So thank you, and it's been a pleasure being on this Writer's Block.
Everyone, that was Patrick Graham. Thank you so much indeed for that fantastic range of pieces and the sheer variety. I loved starting off with the contemporary and the fresh and the topical, that wonderful energetic but light tone, bringing power and passion and lively observation to a new and engaged form of journalistic writing. That's exactly the kind of fresh blood, frankly, that journalism needs. I also love the innocence and the tribute and tenderness and humor of the middle piece, and finally the poetic flow and rhythm and the great conversational voice mixed in with passion and urgency of the final poem. Thank you very much. That was Patrick Graham, everyone. Our last speaker before we close tonight, Madeline will be dropping in before the end to tell us all the different ways we can engage with writing on the wall, future writers on the block, and indeed the future of this weird hybrid in-person and online way of writing and reading and engaging with literature. She'll be dropping in, but first we have another fabulous writer who has been with us on this writing journey for the last 3 weeks, but even more than that. So her name is Mia Farlan, and it gives me huge pleasure to welcome to the floor for the next 9 minutes, Mia Farlan. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bidisha. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me. I have prepared, I'm going to read from the first page of my novel, my latest novel, Parallel Hell. It's about a suicide-obsessed Londoner, literary fiction. It's set in both London and Wellington. It's laced with dark humour. I'm going to read the first page, and then I'm also going to read one of the phone calls that she makes to the Samaritans just after something happens. If you are serious, long story short, you don't seek external validation. You believe in yourself, you keep stumm until it shows fit. But let's say it's bursting out of you, it's leaking out, and you just can't stop yourself from at least hinting you've got something on the boil. You could probably go ahead, actually, remembering that no one's going to take you seriously anyway. You might like to think of sliding in a knot, though. It's more subtle, more oblique to begin with. And then later on, you could lose the knot, following up with a kind of riffing, where you vary the negative with the positive. I'm not, I am, I would never, I would, I couldn't, I could. This is more or less the verbal equivalent of what is known surrealistically as Magritte's trahison des images, the treachery of images. It's sort of like the more you look at a word, the more unreal it seems. It's like it loses its meaning, like this page. The human body is made, it's so clever though, with a wonderful cut-out mechanism, where the fuse trips when the system's overloaded or it doesn't like what's going on. There's snap, a certain je ne sais quoi of, is this really happening? Suddenly hovering over the let's not think about it whole situation, and everything becomes vaguely surreal, like you've lost your glasses or you're off your face at a nightclub or the theatre and they're pumping out fake fog. So the next piece I'm going to read is from a bit later in the novel, about halfway. Phone call. Please hold the line to retain your place in the queue. Thank you. Ding dong, 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 ding dong. The repetition of the ringtone was meditative, like music. Ding dong, ding dong. It was calming, soporific, This was perfect, really, in that what she wanted, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, was to sleep, ding dong, which might happen if no one ever answered the phone, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. They clearly needed volunteers. That was almost 10 minutes. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Although, as it was 2:15 a.m., this would be within rush hour, she supposed. Downside of being unoriginal. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. 2 or 3 minutes later, a trip in the pattern and hello, an audible apparition with no lead-in, the voice of an older woman well into her 80s, and the word genteel came to mind, an assumption based on one word and possibly quite wrong. In fact, this woman might be an aging addict with 20 or 30 years clean time and a past as a prostitute in the Netherlands. My name's Roz, the voice said. Is there a name I can call you? Franny said, no boundaries. But I know someone who volunteers as a Samaritan. Do you know me? No, I don't, said the voice, said Roz, if that was her name. No, I don't suppose you do. The voice was not the same as the ex-friend's friend, come to think of it. It was similar, but not the same. What's bothering you? This volunteer asked, moving on. They were probably given a sheet with sample starter questions when they trained to go on phones. It was a logical question, though. It made sense. In any case, I'm finding it hard to sleep, Franny said, while a number of frightened and or depressed and or suicidal people held or didn't hold the line. Has anything happened to make you feel anxious? The voice asked. Roz asked. It was like talking to someone in the dark, someone you'd never met before, and chatting with them in the dark. I got an email, Franny said. They had my old password. I was hacked a few years ago, so I suppose they got it then. They said they knew I'd been on X-rated sites, which, it's a scam, said the voice. Roz, as she called herself. Perhaps it was her middle name. I got one exactly the same. They said something about pay by Bitcoin. Oh, that's what I got. Were volunteers advised to lie to make you feel better? That was in the email I got. They said, Roz said, she was more likely a retired nurse from Chichester than a retired escort. I was accessing porn sites and they had all my contacts. They just want money. I've got an old email account I can't get into anymore. I hate to think someone might be squatting in there. Roz said, the trouble with computers is that you feel out of control. She said, the important thing to do is to delete the emails, to delete them. She said, I probably should have reported it to the police, but I just deleted it. Nothing will happen, she said. You're sure? As sure as I can be. I've had the same email. Try not to let it play on your mind, Roz said, and I hope you'll get some sleep. Gosh, you're up all night listening to people, Franny said, their chat in the dark coming to a close. Well, perhaps not all night. Only until 4, Roz said. It was possible she really was called Roz, and fair enough if she wasn't, if she preferred a pseudonym. Either way, well, thank you. I'm glad I could be of some help. They said goodbye, and Roz vanished like a fairy godmother, off to the next caller. That's me. Thank you very much, and thank you, Bidisha. It's wonderful to be here. You said something lovely about my first novel, Footnotes to Sex, that it was like Seinfeld meets Dorothy Parker. And now I'm writing a book about suicide, or rather I've sort of coming to the close of one. It feels very apt in that Dorothy Parker wrote poetry about suicide. Enough Rope, her first collection, with that famous poem, ending in You May As Well Live. Yes, and I love Dorothy Parker as a writer, so yeah.
Thanks so much, Mia. You just enabled me to connect the dots there because your name was familiar to me, and I've now connected the name and the face and the writer to the writing. Thanks so much for the measure, the polish, and the clarity of what we just heard, the balance between intense emotion and the polished language, the exquisite detailed imagery, and the balance of honesty and honed craft. Thank you so much. We are exactly right on time, exactly as we had planned to be. This has worked out well. Our Zoom etiquette is really unassailable, I think. Before handing back over to Madeline, I just wanted to say a huge, huge thank you to Writing on the Wall, to Madeline, to Kieran, to Zach, to Amy, to Becky, to everyone who's been working so hard behind the scenes, and above all, for the opportunity to meet so many incredible writers who chatted, came, performed, wrote, asked questions, engaged, and showed up for 3 weeks. There are some names that have recurred for the whole of the 3 weeks, and we all know what a commitment that is and what a sign of passion it is, and that we're competing with everyone being on screens all the time. So I'm so incredibly grateful that everyone showed up. We do these things and we don't know if anyone's going to pay back in good karma or not, but I think that we all did something really constructive here. So with those thanks, let me hand back over to Madeline right now.
Thank you, Bidisha. And I'd just like to say thank you to all of those writers who shared their work. Incredibly different pieces, but all very, very relevant and also vital and just incredibly strong writing. So I want to say congratulations and thank you. I've known Patrick for many, many years, so I know the quality of his work. And actually you can pick up Patrick's children's book, Three Little Jamaicans from Nowhere. There's a little plug for you, Patrick. But it was a pleasure for me tonight, this evening, to meet Sanita and Maya also. Brilliant writing. Thank you very much for joining us for tonight's block party. And a huge thank you to you, Bidisha, for your work over the last 3 weeks. And I'm really hoping that this is farewell and not goodbye, because we have got our festival coming up, Bidisha, and I hope you'll be joining us. There's always a job for you to do in the WOW Festival. You're almost part of the team. I'd just like to finally remind you that we are launching the WOW Festival in May. The programme is launched now. Our first event is the 1st of May. It's full of amazing events. Sorry, I'm getting a message through from Bidisha. Apologies, Maya. It's Maya and not Maya. Apologies for that. Do excuse me. Okay. WOW Festival begins in May, and the full programme is available on the website now. We're taking a break from the Writer's Block because of the festival, but the Writer's Block will be back in June with more fantastic activities and a new writer on the block. Our full programme for the festival is www.writingonthewall.org.uk. I'd like to thank the WOW team who've been working behind the scenes tonight, and all of you who've tuned in for this evening's block party. Hope to see you all again soon, and thank you for that. Good night.